we're going live to really demonstrate options for multifamily financing, to be able to really get that multifamily project off the ground and paid for. And so slightly different for new construction as opposed to pre-existing assets. Now, the problem today with pre-existing assets and getting financing is that the cap rates have went up so high that values have diminished. They've come down. And when you talk about valuations based on cap rates, when cap rates go down, values go up. So in 2019, when cap rates started to get compressed and they went way down, values just exponentially went through the roof. And so appraised values went up exponentially. So even any brain dead investor can make money during those times, because as long as values continue to grow, values will be able to get the appraised value of that asset will be able to underwrite on a financial institution over the underwriting table. Okay. Now, in the contrary, when interest rates go up, you can't pay for the actual debt service on that property if and only if the cap rate is below that threshold of what your interest rate is. And so when that happens, values go down. So as cap rates go back up with interest rates, values go back down and the value gets compressed. And so that's what happened now in 2021, 22, 23, and still today. And so the biggest issue is that values are only about 50% of what they were just 2 years ago. And so people sit back, scratch my head and go, how could that be, Jerome? And I sit back and I tell you guys, it doesn't matter. The asset could be exactly the same tenants, the same walls, the same paint, the same drywall, the same everything. No difference in income or anything, but yet the value is half. And it's all based on the compression of values as they refer to cap rates, okay? Now, the reason I go over this is because the goal is to get money to be able to get these things financed. So the reason that I like ground up construction is because I can manipulate how I build to make sure that the value upon completion holds enough finished value that I can actually get a stabilized loan on that asset, and I can underwrite it from the front end. And so I always explain it like this. When you go to Las Vegas, who controls the winning stakes? Is it the house or is it the people coming in? Now, I'll tell you guys, they ain't building billion-dollar casinos because people that are coming in, sitting on the table, sedentary individuals like you and I, aren't winning exponentially. Otherwise, we'd be building the casinos and they'd be out of business. And the reason they're building multi-billion-dollar casinos is because the house wins, guys. They have a formula, and if you function like the house, they win. What does this have to do with banks and lending? Everything. Because if you function the way the bank is the house, and the way banks make money is by lending money. So they're not trying to not lend you money. You just have to understand how banks work, because if you understand how the lending institutions work, you will get financing. And most people just don't realize that. Most people think that the banks are out to get you. Now, they're out to get you if you don't pay, but they want to underwrite the asset. So what I always tell people is you have to understand how to underwrite real estate, because if you don't understand how to underwrite real estate and you don't understand how the house works, the house being the bank, you lose and the bank won't finance you. So why not understand that on the front end to understand, okay, what is the bank in need of? And we're going to go over that here in just one moment. We're going to go over exactly what that looks like here in just one moment. For all intended purposes, though, I need to explain to you guys that everything we do is function and based around the house being the bank. So we underwrite based on banking laws and on debt ratios and what banks require for appraised values to understand, okay, does this thing even make sense financially to build? And if the answer is no, you just walk away from it before you buy it. But most people function with their eyes closed, right? They're like going, I think it's going to work. And that's where fear comes from, is the unknown. But when you know how assets underwrite, you know how the banks and the house works, then you can just underwrite like they do. And if it doesn't make sense for you, and you understand how the bank works, it's not going to make sense for them either. And some people get to almost the finish line and the bank will sit there and go, I like the asset. But then they go to the underwriting table and they come back and say, no go, you're not doing it. Okay. So here's the thing, guys. Values are based on revenue. Okay. And when you evaluate an asset based on the revenue that it produces, that includes the debt service on that asset as well. So when debt is really cheap and interest rates are low, it's a lot easier to get a loan. And when debt service is really high and the expense for money is more expensive, the value of that asset goes down because of the debt service that that asset has to produce in lieu of being able to just get it to pencil and just be able to take care of the debt, because most banks carry 70+% of the actual debt. So you're in partnership with the bank, but the bank actually has more into it than we, the owners. The bank really does. So once people get their heads wrapped around this, it's easier to sit back and go, oh, I get it. So I understand where banks and leverage comes from, and I understand how they're underwriting it, and we underwrite under those same circumstances. We ourselves have the ability to go out and better pencil a project. Okay, now let's talk about this real quick. The reason that I love government assisted loans right now I'm not a big government assisted loan person when the market is right. So I always sit back and this is what I tell the banks, say, look, I want to set my projects up, my bigger projects, for HUD lending, because I can go in and get a HUD loan at like 5%. I can buy that HUD loan down for just a few $1,000s, like $50,000 dollars on the front end, and the debt service goes down to like sub 5% levels, and now I get like 4.5% on like a 35-year fixed term loan. And so now I just sit in the asset and I forget about it. But there's pros and cons to everything, right? But right now, government assisted loan gets the project to at least pencil, where you have a stabilized asset. You can cost segregate it. You can go in and get cash out on your refi, where on institutional money that's not a government-backed loan, they're not going to give you any cash out right now because there's too much liability, and they want you in it with them. The banks do. So when we're talking about lending right now on large assets, and when I say large assets, I'd say someplace in excess of about 50 units or above, it's worth doing HUD. Now, I will tell you guys that anything 50 units or below, HUD's not as good because of the cost to be able to get into the acquisition. Now, if your basis of your construction and your overall project is low enough, HUD will cost you about $80,000 to get a HUD loan, okay? By the time you onboard all of the necessary affiliates that you need, like the inspections, the lenders, and everybody, you're going to spend about $80,000. So you got to pencil the project. If it's going to take away where the project can't get stabilized lending because that 80 grand, then the project is too small. So you might be able to do it on a 20 unit, 30 unit, 40 unit, but you got to be able to sit in that asset. If the goal is to sell, you don't want to get a stabilized HUD loan. Okay. Now, if you think that you might sell down the road, but it's not going to be immediate, then the HUD loan sometimes is going to be worth it, but you want to at least hold for at least 3 years as a minimum. 5 years as a minimum is even better, okay? Now, if you anticipate selling sooner than that, you have to underwrite the HUD loan to make sure it's worthy of buying. Same thing with FHA financing, but FHA is not expensive. It's made to be affordable, but that only works on 4 unit, 3 unit, and 2 unit. So duplexes, tris, and quads are what FHA finance you work on, and single family, because those are residential loans. Anytime you get 5 units or above, it's commercial lending. Once you get a commercial lending, you start looking at HUD loans or your local banks, guys. And I'll tell you guys that when you guys go in, the best financing you're going to get is not from institutions. It's from small credit unions and your local municipal banks. That's where you want to function first. So when you go in and you're trying to get like smaller assets done, you can't get HUD because it doesn't pencil. Where do I go to get the best terms and financing? Local lenders. Local lenders, hand down, are always the best. So if you just Google local credit unions in St. Louis, Missouri, local credit unions and small banks in Chicago, Illinois, small credit, you look at credit unions and small banks in Austin, Texas. No matter where you are across the United States, you just Google that, you're going to get a plethora of different credit unions and institutions that pop up that are local, small, and those people, you're an individual. You're not a number. Once you go to like Wells Fargo, you go to Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, you go to Citibank, Chase, or any of these big guys, you're just a number. If it goes to an underwriting table, they're just pushing paper. And if your paper doesn't comply with their checks and balances, it's black and white. It's either approved or denied. There's no gray ground in the middle. I always say there's color in the gray area. So when you go to small local lenders or credit unions, that's where the color comes out, because it's no longer black or white. They'll look at you as an individual. Your circumstances are just that. They're your circumstances, and you can justify the lending on a lot of the small assets with single family builds, with small multifamily builds that are like 20 units or less, even if you lack experience, because those are more relationship based. And there might be some status quo with some of those ones, but you'll be surprised how willing those small banks and credit unions are to work with you if and only if they're local. Okay, so that's how you get financing, guys. I just wanted to come in real quick today, drop you guys some golden nuggets on financing, give you the big picture of how we get these done, and give you some parameters to function in. Now, look, I'm always dropping large value in mass quantity here on YouTube. And I have videos that are specifically about HUD. I have videos that are specifically about creative financing. I have videos on here that are specifically about how to get financing on single family builds and how to get financing on large multifamily builds. So I'm going to recommend one of each at the end of this video so you can go back and watch. If you're watching this later, just hit on the comment section, #repeat, so that we know how many of you guys are watching on repeat. And then comment down below on what type of video you want to watch in regards to multifamily or single family ground up development. But don't forget to click and subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that thumbs up button, give us some love. And until next time, God bless, and go out and have a great day and continue compounding your success.